An Oklahoma Republican filed a similar bill which would have banned food made from aborted fetuses in 2012. But the legislation did not pass because there's no aborted fetal tissue inside of your fucking food! Food containing human fetal tissue, which again does not exist, could meet the definition of cannibalism, which no federal law criminalizes and most states do not regulate.
In the land of the freaks.
Let's look ahead to tomorrow now. A high-stakes hearing is set for a lawsuit that could ban abortion pills, even in states where abortion is legal. The federal lawsuit filed in Texas challenges the FDA's approval of medication that induces an abortion, saying that the FDA never had the authority to approve the drugs in the first place. If this goes through, it would ban the pills not just in Texas, but all across the country.
Does anybody else find it a little fascinating how in 2022, even though that massive red wave never came, for some reason, Texas is calling the shots for what's going to happen in like every other state based on their opinion that they call fact, and then they just think that that's going to magically make their opinion into a fact. They can't even say that their God told them to do it. I mean, that's not going to stop them from saying it, but it doesn't make it valid because they can't point out where in the fucking book it even said that this was a problem in the first place. It's almost like it's just insecure men who work so hard to be like government employees instead of working hard to be likable people. And for some reason, that's everybody else's fault. So we're just going to punish you for having consensual sex and enjoying yourself in your own spare time. That's what you get for minding your own business. You should have been minding my own business, you know? What the fuck? State and Texas could. Dueling court cases in Washington state and Texas could determine legality of abortion pill. Key points: a federal judge in Washington state heard arguments in a case in which attorneys general from 17 states and D.C. are seeking to keep the abortion pill on the market. In Texas, a federal judge is expected to rule any day on a the grammar of the person writing this shit. In Texas, a federal judge is expected to rule any day on a separate case that threatens to remove the pill from the market. The U.S. is now set up for the possibility that two federal courts could issue rulings on the abortion pill that conflict with each other. Two federal judges are poised to issue rulings soon in dueling cases that could dramatically affect access to the abortion pill Mifepristone. In Washington state, U.S. District Judge Thomas Rice is weighing whether to scrap federal regulations on the medication that complicate access even where abortion is legal, which shouldn't be a possibility. I guess I'll just pretend everything is fine and things make sense. He is also considering whether to issue an order that would block the Food and Drug Administration from taking any action to pull the pill from the market or reduce its availability. In Texas, U.S. District Judge Matthew Kacsmaryk is considering whether to order the FDA to pull, how do you pronounce that, from the U.S. market. Medical associations that oppose abortion sued the FDA in November to overturn its approval of the medication, which dates back more than 20 years. Rice heard arguments Tuesday in Spokane from the FDA and legal team representing a coalition of Democratic attorneys general. Again, what the fuck is this grammar? Who filed the lawsuit challenging the agency. The entire hearing lasted under an hour, because of course it did, because there's nothing to find common ground on with this issue. It's crazy people versus not crazy people. And I thought the mentally ill weren't supposed to be allowed to serve in office, but for some reason, Christians are everywhere. Kacsmaryk heard arguments in the Texas case earlier this month and said he would issue an order as soon as possible. He was appointed by former President Donald Trump and appointed by the president before that, Barack Obama. By the time we filed our complaint, we were obviously very much aware of what's going on in Texas. That's just the legal world we're living in, said Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson, who is leading the lawsuit seeking to keep that on the market and expand access to the medication. The U.S. is now set up for the possibility that two federal district courts could issue rulings on the abortion pill that conflict with each other, potentially adding further confusion to an already complex web of state-by-state regulations on medication. The case has also raised the prospect that the Supreme Court might ultimately become involved in escalating litigation over the most common method to terminate a pregnancy in the U.S. Almost like we should not have a Supreme Court at all. If we get two diametrically opposite rulings on what FDA should do, that's almost certain to go to the U.S. Supreme Court, wrote Glenn Cohen, a former lawyer with Cohen signed a brief in the Texas case supporting the FDA approval. Ferguson said the Washington case is asking the judge to expand and protect Mifepristone access, specifically in the 17 states plus the District of Columbia that are parties to the lawsuit. In the Texas case, medical associations that oppose abortion are asking the judge to pull the abortion pill from the U.S. U.S. market nationwide. Because what's surprising about that? If the judge in Texas rules first and orders the FDA to pull the medication from the market, the judge in Washington could still issue an order that at least preserves access in 17 states and D.C., Ferguson said. The federal judge in Washington will be finding on Washington, the federal judge in Washington will be finding that on Washington that would preserve it. Federal judge in Washington will be finding on Washington that would preserve it in Washington state and the plaintiff, Ferguson said. But you'd have competing judicial orders, and sometimes that gets worked out on appeal. You could have a situation where in some states it's not available, and in some states it is available. Any of those things are possible. A lot, though, depends on how these judges write these rulings. The FDA has subjected Mifepristone to restrictions under a federal monitoring program since it approved the pill in 2000. Wait, this was approved literally 23 years ago. Then why are we still arguing about it? I mean, it's not like it's murder or anything. Like, nobody's getting hurt. In fact, it doesn't even get to the point where a clump of cells is being vacuumed out of somebody's genitalia. So there's not even a piece of organic material to use in order for theocrats to pretend that it is murder. It's just a medication that works. It just works. It just works before an abortion is even necessary. Almost like it's just insecure men who know that they can't hold a relationship down, so they get government power. But the agency has kept some restrictions in place. Patients have to sign a form that lays out the risk of Mifepristone, and they have to obtain a prescription from a healthcare provider who is certified under the federal monitoring program. Pharmacies also have to be certified under that program to dispense the medication to the patient. Ferguson and Attorney General asking the judge in Washington to drop these restrictions to 17 states, include Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Hawaii, Maine, Maryland, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and Washington. Because why are states saying that this is what other states should be doing? There's no reason that should ever happen. It's almost like people who care about states' rights don't care about states' rights and also hate women. Cohen said the Washington lawsuit raises the question of whether the Biden administration would appeal a decision that orders the FDA to drop Mifepristone restrictions. The White House may not want to explain why it is defending obstacles to medication for abortion, even though the FDA probably wants to protect its regulatory authority. Possible the Biden administration wouldn't appeal if they lose in Washington state and just let the remaining restrictions on the abortion pill fall. An expert on reproductive health law at Temple University said the cases in Washington and Texas raised the prospect of Supreme Court involvement. Repooplicunt signed a brief in the Texas case that defended the FDA's approval of the medication, respectively, and those circuit courts issue contradictory rulings. Those are then questions that are prime for the Supreme Court. A slight majority of the judges on the Ninth Circuit Court were nominated by Democratic presidents, while an overwhelming majority of the judges on the Fifth Circuit were nominated by Democrat presidents. Oregon Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum to end the abortion rights under Roe v. Wade. We don't particularly want to make this into a U.S. Supreme Court case, Rosenblum said. Texas Republican wants food made of aborted fetuses labeled. Okay. The proposed law, authored by State Senator Bob Hall, says food and medicine would have to be labeled if it contained or was manufactured with human fetal tissue, or if it was the product of research that used such tissue. The bill defines human fetal tissue as tissue, cells, organs obtained by an aborted unborn child. Unfortunately, many Texans are unknowingly consuming products that either contain human fetal parts or were developed using human fetal parts, read a statesman from Hall's office. While some may not be bothered by this, there are many Texans with religious or moral beliefs that would oppose consumption or use of these products. There are no conditions under which the FDA would consider human fetal tissues to be safe or legal for human or animal consumption, an agency spokesperson wrote in an email to the HuffPost. The bill, which Hall filed on behalf of a constituent, marks one of the latest eruptions recurring controversies over the scientific use of cell lines, which can be derived from aborted or miscarried fetuses. Scientists routinely use such cells for research and experimentation, but they are not used as food additives. The fact that this even had to be said, a single group of cells from a human embryo can be cultured thousands of times for many years. Several of the cell lines most widely used by researchers today were created decades ago. Anti-abortion groups, most notably Children of God for Life, have often called for boycotts of companies with and Cenomics over their use of HEC-293 cells in research and development. The HEC-293 cell line originally traces back to kidney cells obtained from either an abortion or miscarriage in the 1970s, according to Reuters. The cells have been used hundreds of thousands of times over the last half-century, acknowledged using the cell line to develop a skincare product. In addition, Cenomics used
Sonomics used the cells to conduct millions of tests on flavor enhancers used in its products without using human taste testers, according to CBS News. The Texas bill would have little effect on the food industry since cell lines aren't used as food ingredients, but it could have a major impact on the medical field because that's the real point. You know, sometimes Republicans cannot possibly be as stupid as they present themselves, and when it seems like that, it's probably the case. The law would require labeling any medical product derived from research using human fetal tissue. This broad wording could apply to a vast array of vaccines and medicines, from polio to HIV treatments. That's pretty important. Okay. Human fetal tissues is used quite a lot in research. One geneticist who declined to be identified to avoid associating their institution with political debates about abortion told HuffPost, "There's no way to cleanly draw a line between the experiment that directly led to the product and the line of research that enabled that to happen. Catholic leaders and anti-abortion groups have objected to using HEC-293 cells. Catholic leaders and anti-abortion groups have objected to using HEC-293 cells and other human-derived cell lines in COVID-19 vaccines research and testing. However, the Vatican ultimately determined they were morally acceptable." Even the Vatican is woke. Go fuck yourself. The most commonly administered COVID-19 vaccines made by Moderna, Pfizer, and Johnson & Johnson were all tested using fetal cell lines before being used on humans. The FDA has tried to play down concerns about using embryonic cell lines in COVID-19 vaccines research. A spokesperson noted, "Fetal tissue used to establish the cell culture lines was obtained decades ago, and no new fetal tissue is needed to produce cell lines to make the vaccines." But Hall contends that many of his constituents view using such cells as a matter of conscience and should be clearly disclosed. That way, when we get bitching new medicine, Republicans can continue to avoid it because of their stupid beliefs until they just fucking die off. A well-informed consumer can make whatever choice they decide on purchasing a product so long as they have all of the information in hand to make the choice. Hall wrote in an email to Huffington Post. An Oklahoma Republican filed a similar bill which would have banned food made from aborted fetuses in 2012. But the legislation did not pass because there's no aborted fetal tissue inside of your fucking food! Food containing human fetal tissue, which again does not exist, could meet the definition of cannibalism, which no federal law criminalizes and most states do not regulate. I'll just say it one more time. Food containing human fetal tissue, which again does not exist, could meet the definition of cannibalism, which no federal law criminalizes and most states do not regulate. Austin, Texas. A Texas Republican wants to make foods containing material from aborted human fetuses clearly and conspicuously labeled, even though such products do not exist. Well, who said that? Who said this? A Texas Republican. Austin, Texas. Is that the name? Austin, Texas? Wow. When he heard keeping it weird, they really went big. The proposed law, authored by State Senator Bob Hall, says food and medicine would have to be labeled if it contained or was manufactured with human fetal tissue, or if it was the product of research that used such tissue. The bill defines human fetal tissue as tissue, cells, or organs obtained from an aborted clump of cells. Unfortunately, many Texans are unknowingly consuming products that either contain human fetal parts or were developed using human fetal parts. Read a statement from Hall's office. Well, some may not be bothered by this. There are many Texans with stupid-ass beliefs that would oppose consumption or use these products. The Texas state capitol is seen in Austin, Texas on the first day of the 87th legislature's third special season. On September 20th, 2021, State Senator Bob Hall wants to make foods containing material from aborted human fetuses clearly and conspicuously labeled. We've done that. We've been here. We've gone over this. What the fuck? Did you fucking, hey, no, you literally just fucking copy and pasted the whole article again. What the fuck? See, this is the real weird shit here. You copy and pasted the same article twice. People get paid to do this. And you can't even visit my Patreon. Wow. What are you, like a person struggling financially or something?
What the fuck? And also, what the fuck are abortion pills? Frankly, it doesn't make any sense how these haven't even hit the market yet. You know, the general public doesn't know that much about abortion pills yet. But apparently, before there's anything that does show that these are dangerous to take, it's already something that we have to take to court. Like, we already have to make this a court case to make sure that this is illegal. Why? We already know that it's objectively not murder. You can, like, get exasperated and continue saying, it's murder, it's murder, it's murder. And you might even say it with confidence and be able to state it as an axiom or a loaded question, in fact, that you're going to launch at your opponents. But 70% of the country is laughing at you because you're ridiculous. You need to just stop talking. But you're not going to. However, unlike you, there are other people who can continue thinking forward, understanding that the only reason why the FDA would need to be taken to court for this would be if they were pumping out poison. How do you know that they're pumping out poison? Do you know that? Oh my God. You know what? Actually, no. You're probably crossing your arms, looking at me smug by this point, like you're poisoning the living baby. You can tell yourself that it's alive all you want, over and over and over and over. You show your one study from an extremely biased, paid-off doctor that says it's like a living, breathing, conscious mammal that's ready to do stuff like 15 weeks in. If you're so confident in that, then I'm sure you can confidently debunk other sources that other people are going to cite, right? A wide variety of institutions that do not have an implicit religious bias stated front and center. I'm sure you have plenty of actual science-based arguments that actually care about the facts and understand the scientific method enough to know that these kinds of things begin with a question, maybe a hypothesis, not a conclusion. Now, of course, I don't think you're so bad at playing a character that you're just going to tell me, no, I know the conclusion. We're just doing this for shits and giggles. You're kind of trying to wiggle your way around that. Oh, no, I can't just say that I'm starting from a conclusion and working backwards. That would sound immature. I mean, some guy in a suit and a tie told me that it's slaughter in the womb. So I just kind of took him at face value. Or somebody from your church told you that, God's children are being murdered by all these harlots. And you just took them at face value because you're a religious person. But you didn't check the book? Us secular folk, we just assumed that you read that book already. Surely you're not one of these fucking idiots that's basing all of their life decisions on a religious codex that they didn't even read. No way you're one of those idiots, right? I thought that was an urban legend. Surely, like millions on millions on millions of people trying to make these big-ass decisions about other people's lives, people who they have never even met before, just complete strangers, just trying to impact their lives and trying to be the moral authority to everything that they say and do, all in the name of a book that they didn't even read. You read the book, right? I mean, it really doesn't matter because it's still the rantings and ravings of opinionated dead men. Probably would have had a better take on things had they had modern medicine and air conditioning and clean water at the time when they were writing what they wrote. However, every now and then they shit out a nugget of wisdom. And because it was like the beginning of time, they could just put a trademark on each lesson saying, yeah, this originally came from God and only this book, and nobody else is going to teach you these life lessons that could help you later on. Only this book could teach you that. Even in that context. Where in the book does it say that abortion is murder? If 70% of this country believes that Roe v. Wade should not have been overturned, nearly 30% of this country thinks that that was a good thing for some fucking reason, and simply a fraction of that 30% was capable of storming Capitol Hill. What the fuck are we doing? The collectivists. What are we, the collectivists, doing? Why are we letting them just rock the whole populism game? If they can storm Capitol Hill with that many people over something as ridiculous as...
Obviously, my candidate won because we've been saying all year that he was going to win or he cheated, and then he didn't win, so he cheated.
And that was like their only motivation. And that got that many people there. Oh, right. I remember. It's because half of us don't want to believe that things could possibly get so bad that a large scale negative event could actually take place and become so prevalent that it is relevant on TV streams, internet, eventually in our personal lives as well. Personal and professional lives, really. I mean, I know. It's weird. Like, the 2010s were like, hey, life isn't a movie. Stop acting so hyperbolic about the littlest shit. About acting like their life was a big movie and shit. In the moment that the whole world shuts down because everybody's getting sick with the plague and everything's starting to look a wee bit dystopian, suddenly we don't want to act like Matt Damon. Now we kind of just want to tell ourselves, oh, no, this isn't happening. If you told yourself like a couple years back now that Roe v. Wade from 50 fucking years ago was going to get overturned, would you have really believed it? That the old times were going to start being revived? It's almost like what people have been trying to tell you your entire life about this specific type of party was actually kind of true. You'd been told that for so long, you started to think people were just exaggerating all the time. They took advantage of that and started to make it seem like,
oh yeah, they want to be like the good guys all the time. They make themselves look like victims and stuff, and us like victimizers and bad guys. Really, it's all just a narrative game, you know? We're not here to guilt trip you like those condescending liberals, okay? We're just coming in with the facts and the logic. We're the truth party, but we're not playing any kind of manipulative good and evil game.
And the home of the wage.